My name is Tasha. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and I struggle with effects of past abuse, codependency, and control. I was born and raised in a small town in North Carolina with my dad, whom was my best friend, a mom that took good care of us, and a sweet baby brother. Things seemed pretty normal to me back then. We went to church every Sunday and every Wednesday night. I went everywhere with my dad and played outside every chance I got. Life was good to me then. At the age of 4, that's when my life would go not so normal anymore. At the age of 4, my grandfather would start to sexually and emotionally abuse me for the next 9 years. He would convince me this is what real love felt like, and the name calling would be a part of it. Over the next 9 years, this would continue with no one except his wife, my grandmother, no one. She would just turn the other cheek. This would begin the roller coaster ride of my life. I would slowly begin to die inside every day. I was in my own personal hell. Finally, my parents found out. I thought I was free. He would finally pay for what he had done, but my grandfather would quickly convince my dad and the entire family that I was a liar. And to keep peace and save embarrassment for the family, nothing was ever done, including no help for me. The family would just move on like nothing ever happened. I would even be forced to have supervised visits so my grandparents could see me. The abuse would still continue until my mom finally put a stop to me going over there. My grandparents would then stand in front of their church, our church, and convince them it was all a lie and that my parents were wrong for keeping his grandchildren away from him. This would eventually lead to my family being forced out of that church by the pastor and the congregation. I immediately took on all the blame of what had happened and why my family was falling apart. Why did anyone not believe me? What did I do to deserve all of this? I was so lost and alone and began to think maybe it is all my fault. I had no one who believed me, no one I could trust, and no one to help me. I began to hate God and anything to do with church. Why did I want to be like those people? Just when I thought my nightmare was over, my cousin would decide to take advantage of the situation. Over the next 4 years, he would sexually abuse me whenever he saw me. He would tell me to keep quiet, it's our secret. Besides, the family thinks you're a liar anyway, so they'd never believe you. I thought, well, he's right, so here we go again. By this point in my life, I had built up walls no one could tear down. I became angry and bitter, fought with anxiety, and became so depressed. I fought verbally and physically with people all the time because no one could see any sign of weakness in me. I began smoking and cutting myself to ease the pain. I became addicted to diet pills and purging my food daily. I would take up to 7 diet pills a day until the point of blackout. Anything to get my mind off the hell I was going through. I would even pick up witchcraft and begin to fall in love with it for a short time. I even tried to take my own life for the first time in middle school. It was quickly doctored with an ace bandage, and we would move on again. Eventually, that abuse would stop. Once again, I was left hanging out in the world to deal with all the chaos in my head and my body alone. My parents had divorced by this time. My dad would leave, and I would only see him 4 more times until the age of 20. I haven't seen him since then. My mom would move on to dating, and eventually I would move in with my other grandparents. The manipulation and emotional abuse from my grandma would start and continue until I moved out. My hair was never done right. I was never skinny enough, and I could never do anything right. I would try to take my own life again by taking a bottle of pills and going to sleep. I woke up the next morning angry because I couldn't even do that right. Little did I know God was watching over me, even in one of the darkest times of my life. Even when I hated him, he had other plans for me. I took up sex and alcohol by 10th grade. Alcohol would become my new love, and sex is how I thought you found love. My words cut like a knife, and partying became the normal. By 10th grade, I was out of control. I would sneak out, run away, and do anything I could to cause trouble, even though now I know it was a cry for help. My grandparents couldn't handle me any longer, so I was forced to move in with my mom. She would become so angry and violent and go on rages when least expected. The slightest thing set her off, but only with me. I often thought that maybe it was because I messed up her new life. The physical abuse became almost weekly between 17 and 19 years old. One night came and I had had enough. I was 19 and we had a huge fight. I was done and I knew leaving was not going to be easy. I was beaten so bad that night that I thought I was going to die. I knew I had to get out, so I moved in with a friend the very next day. The partying and heavy drinking would continue. I eventually moved in with my now husband. We lived together for a year before marrying. We partied and had good times, but my anger and outbursts were on the regular. He had his hands full. I didn't know how to let him love me. I just knew I had to guard my heart so he couldn't hurt me like all the others. God definitely sent Chris into my life. One day I was so tired of drinking, I knew I had a problem. I had a child by now and realized one night that if something were to happen to him, I was too intoxicated to even see him. It was the first loud tug on my heart that I felt. I now know it was God. Some friends of ours invited us to church the next week. It had been years since I had attended church, but something told me to go try it out. We did and went back the next Sunday and the next 4 years after that. One day, driving home from work, I pulled my car over and asked Jesus into my life right there on the side of the road. I couldn't wait any longer, and I was baptized shortly after that. I was still confused as to why I was still angry and could not break some of my habits. So I went to talk to someone at church about it and was ridiculed and shamed. We left that church that day. I was so upset and honestly never wanted to go back to church, but I knew I had to. I kept feeling the nudge to come try Temple out. So we did and knew that day that's where we belong because God is so good. A friend of mine kept telling me about CR for months. She had no idea about any of my past. I thought, I do not need CR, and I'm certainly not telling anybody my business. September 28th, 2018, God spoke to me. I got in my car, drove to Selma, and sat at a gas station for 30 minutes. My heart was beating so fast, and I was beyond nervous. That night was chip night. I was like, what in the world have I walked into? But when the altar opened, I ran up there and took my first blue chip. My recovery journey began. I had no idea what God had in store. I went on to complete a step study and have found so much freedom and have had so many victories. God definitely sent CR to me to help save my life. Principle 4 says to openly examine and confess my faults to God, to myself, and to someone I trust. This was one of the scariest steps, but the most freeing to me. I had never told anyone my entire story until that day, and it was one of the best feelings in the world. I now have freedom from being chained down by people that have hurt me because of forgiveness. I am finding freedom from codependency. I am healing from the thoughts I have held on to about who I thought I was and learning who God says I am. I celebrate each small victory with that. My relationship with my husband and son are mended and is so much better. My mom and I have a much better relationship now, and I have learned boundaries for those that needed them. I haven't had a drink in 6 years, and I haven't smoked a cigarette in 3 years. I forgave every person that hurt me and made my amends where possible. I would like to read you my amends letter that I wrote to my grandfather that abused me for 9 years. This was not for him, but was crucial to my healing. I would also like to say that this letter was never mailed because it wasn't safe, but the healing it brought to just write it down was indescribable. Dear Grandpa, this by far is the hardest thing to do. I struggle to even write the words down to you. I know God is helping guide this pen right now. With every stroke of my pen, the anger increases. That feeling of almost hate comes back. I say almost because I don't hate anyone, but the dislike is strong. What you did to me for all those years was absolutely disgusting. You took full advantage of a helpless little girl. You stole my innocence and most of my early childhood. 9 years of my life was pure hell. You not only stole 9 years from me, but you stole the next 28. You caused me to have nightmares, self-worth issues. I stayed sick. I had anxiety, and I even tried to take my own life. You will never understand what all you took away from me. You will never know just how you made me feel. You will never know just how ashamed you made me feel, and you will never know just how unloved I felt, just how unwanted I felt. You will never understand. While you moved on with your life, mine fell apart. In October 2018, I surrendered all of my hurt from you at the feet of Jesus. I forgave you. I gave you over to God. I started taking it one day at a time and living one moment at a time. I started my healing process from you. All those trust issues, self-worth issues, and hate I felt against you are slowly getting better. One day, you will no longer have any control over me, and I give God all the glory for that. The only thing that came from this is because of you, I have a story to tell. I have chosen to rise above this and use this pain to help others who have or are going through the same thing. I am choosing to move forward, and I am choosing to be thankful for the scars that you caused. I am choosing to be thankful for the deepest, darkest pain that you caused. So you may thought you broke me forever, but you were wrong. God is going to use my story. I no longer have to fear because he is making something beautiful out of my mess. Your mended granddaughter, Tasha. Genesis 50:20 says, "But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive." God sent me a forever family, accountability partners, and a sponsor who has stood by me every step of the way. Childhood trauma is hard, but with God, all things are possible to overcome. Working the steps and continuing to come back, freedom is happening. Chains are breaking. God is using me every day. I am leading a step study to finish some healing I need to work on and to help others find their freedom. I am also leading as the assimilation coach for Temple Celebrate Recovery, and I serve with the Dream Center. It will be selfish of me to keep all his goodness inside when he so freely gave it to me, so I choose to serve wherever he calls me to. Serving has been a huge part of my recovery. I have a purpose, and he has a plan. He is just preparing me for whatever is next, and that's exciting. I don't know what door he will open next, but right now I am trusting him and letting him lead the way. I am forever grateful for CR and to be one of those people. Thank you for letting me share.